back to the San Diego Opera Podcast. Again, we're talking about the 2018-2019 season here at San Diego Opera. And my guest again is David Bennett, who is the General and Artistic Director of the Opera. So welcome back.
Thank you, Nick.
Again.
Good to be back.
We're talking today about, the poster's red.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Carmen.
As it should be when you talk about Carmen, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. Carmen, again, another extraordinary sort of artistic boundary-breaking opera in its time, 1876. The brave little opera comique in Paris decides to produce this salacious, scandalous piece, and it caused a lot of consternation on the board of that opera. People quit.
Absolutely.
Orchestra members walked out, stormed out. They didn't want to play this difficult music. Chorus members who were only used to standing on stage and in a sort of a frigid way and not moving, and they were it was demanded that they act and move and smoke cigarettes and dance and so, no,
Right.
Absolutely. So this was a real game changer in its day, and now it is, of course, the C of the ABCs of opera.
Absolutely.
It's done all over the world, hundreds of performances, maybe even thousands of performances every season, all over the world. Why are we doing Carmen?
Why are we doing Carmen? This season, when I was thinking about what to put on the main stage, I wanted to look at repertoire that were names that people knew, but that hadn't been done here for a little while. And so our last Carmen was 8 years ago.
Okay.
Now we did Tragedy of Carmen last year.
Right, but that's a
series.
very different piece.
Whole different world.
Yeah.
Whole different world structurally, musically, definitely in terms of the director's intent in the production we did. So, I did question. I thought, well, should I do this again? And I thought, absolutely, because it isn't the same work.
Right.
It's as different as it can be in many ways. So I wanted to put together a season that were some titles that had needed a little dusting off that hadn't been here in a while. And the last one was 8 years ago. So even though it feels like Carmen comes around every now and again, 8 years is quite a while.
It's been a while.
Right.
And like The Marriage of Figaro, which we talked about earlier, it's been 12 years.
Correct.
This has been 8 years.
Yeah.
So it's time.
And, it's a title that people want to see, I think.
Right.
It has tunes that everybody adores. Tunes you know before you even go into the theater. It's accessible, but it's also incredibly dramatically compelling. It has one of the most exciting finales of any opera.
Oh, yeah.
So, and, music that you'll leave the theater remembering as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's, we were talking about how Mozart in The Marriage of Figaro is so good about characterizing these persons on the stage. Bizet is very much right there.
Absolutely.
Some of the extraordinary things. There's something very, very simple. Every time Carmen is on stage and every time she opens her mouth, it's a dance. It's always a dance.
She's a gypsy.
Even that slow aria in Act 3 about the cards and the reading of the cards, it's a slow dance. Every time she opens her mouth. And it's to think that Bizet could carry that through a 3-hour stage piece is really pretty incredible.
And in so many different textures and expressions and all of that. Yeah, that's a great observation.
And sometimes it's dangerous and sometimes it's playful and sometimes it's funny, but it's pretty amazing. And the arc of Don José, who starts out as a lyric tenor, and then by the time Act 3 comes along, we're in a whole other vocal world, aren't we?
I think he's clearly moved into a world of danger.
Yeah.
So vocally, it's more dangerous for both of them. It's dangerous. The whole end of the opera is full of danger.
Yeah. Tell us about the singers. Who have you cast?
Just like our Figaro, we have a group of discoveries in our production of Carmen, which I'm very excited about. And young American singers who have sung the roles, just haven't sung in San Diego yet. So I guess we have to start off with our Carmen, right? Because that's what the opera's about. Ginger Costa Jackson, who is a young singer, but has Carmen as her signature role more than any other American singer right now.
Mm.
Sung with every major company. A very beautiful, very expressive singer. A side note, she has a sister named Marina Costa Jackson, who's now coming onto the scene and is sort of a full spinto soprano. So isn't that interesting?
That is, yeah, from the same family.
Incredibly successful singers that
Wow.
are sisters within a few years of each other.
Yeah.
But I worked with Ginger in New York, and she's just an incredibly compelling stage creature. Every performance is different, and I mean that in a good way. As a producer, that can make you scared.
That can be a little frightening. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And as a conductor, it's not that way at all. Do you remember Maria Ewing?
Yes.
So there's a sense of something about Maria Ewing in her, even though it's a bigger and more sort of voluptuous voice. It's very stylish and very. She's really an artist. Yeah. So she's our Carmen. Our Don José is Robert Watson, who is a very big-voiced Don José, and has not sung here before. Again, his career is just burgeoning. But I think he's going to make our audiences very excited. You need a heroic voice in this role.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he definitely is that.
Yeah, it's funny because just because what we said about the role before, that he starts off lyrically, but ends up as a dramatic tenor.
Yep.
But you don't want to cast it that way.
Absolutely.
Where you start with a lyric, a Rodolfo type, and then perhaps dangerously push him to the end of the opera.
You want it to sound dangerous. You don't want it to be dangerous for the singer.
Exactly.
No, so Robert is, I think, will be believable as an innocent in the beginning, but it's a big, heroic voice at the end. So he's going to be very exciting.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Our Michaela is just an amazing singer, Sarah Tucker, who has sung the role several places, sang in San Francisco a couple of seasons ago. She's very small and petite, and you would think she was a soubrette by looking at her, but it's a very steely voice, edging on lyric spinto, with a big, round, domey top.
Ooh.
So, the orchestra's big, right? It's a good-sized orchestra, and in her aria, although it sounds like it's the easiest thing in the world, she has to soar over a good-sized orchestra. So you need a voice that can handle that. Tessitura and also over this orchestra, and she has it in spades. And she looks like an innocent from the country because she's so young and petite looking.
Perfect.
Yeah, and our Escamillo is Scott Connor, who's an American singer who's been singing in Europe for the past decade, but is a very exciting, tall, truly a bass baritone. Not a bass, but a bass baritone. And Escamillo is an interesting role because it has to have the low, but it also has to, the toreador has some high notes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to be comfortable kind of sitting in that range, and you also have to be incredibly physically commanding and sexy, right? And he's got all of that.
Conducting. Who's conducting?
Eve Abel.
Oh,
yeah.
Eve is coming back.
Yeah, has conducted here a lot.
Yeah.
You might recognize that name sounds French. And so Eve is, I think, French-Canadian.
French-Canadian, right.
But this is his sort of sweet spot in terms of repertoire.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about that. And we're bringing back someone for his first directing role with us who has been an assistant. No, that's not true. He directed as one last year.
Oh, yes.
Kyle Lang.
Right.
Who's really grown up as an assistant director here.
Yeah.
Choreographer, assistant director, is now moving on to directing a lot of places. Has been working in Santa Fe this summer. Has worked quite a bit in Europe. Choreographer and director. And he's doing both for us.
Well, and he assisted Pirates of Penzance.
Exactly.
Right?
So he was here with us last fall for both Pirates and As One. And has also been here. I think he assisted Sean Curran in Nixon in China.
Right.
So he's been here quite a bit.
Yeah.
But we're going to give him his first cutting his teeth on the main stage. But this is a perfect thing for him.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a dancer's sensibility throughout the piece.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. It never stops.
Yeah, exactly. And he's directed it before. He just hasn't directed it for us. So I'm very excited about that.
Now, the production itself is from where?
It's a production from Kansas City. And it is a very traditional production, but a very beautiful production. So you will see your castanets and mantillas and lots of gypsy imagery in it. And, you know, I do think that when I was comparing this to Tragedy of Carmen, I wanted to make sure this really looked like a Spanish Carmen.
Right.
And it does.
Right.
And it's very beautiful. It's a big, sumptuous set, but it's a traditional looking set. Yeah.
Well, it's something to look forward to again. Some of these operas, when they come back, they're like reading old friends back.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
But I'm retired now, as you know.
I do.
But I'm sitting at my desk, every year and seeing what's planned for the next year, and I see I would occasionally see titles that I've seen a lot and think, what am I going to talk about again with this piece? But every time you come to the season and it's time to put up and rethink the work. And try and discover new things. There's always something new to discover.
Absolutely.
If it's a great piece.
Absolutely.
And it is.
Yeah, and I think, that's the reason why people like hearing a boheme for the 100th time.
Right.
Is because there are various layers that you can experience in opera. If it's an oral experience, you close your eyes, that's one level. And then you open your eyes and you see it in the theater, that's another level. And then as you get deeper and deeper in the understanding of it, you appreciate the oral experience and the dramatic experience in different ways.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the cast is different each time. So that brings a whole nother level to it. So seeing a boheme and then seeing another one 5 years later is going to be a different experience, right?
Yeah.
Even if the cast is the same, the director is going to be different or the conductor is going to be different. So there's something about it that brings a new life to it every time. And I know you experience that because you come to many of the rehearsals.
Yeah.
And you see what happens in the room. For those of you in the audience that haven't sat in a rehearsal, even though they're works that people have been doing a lot, Ginger has sung Carmen, who knows how many times by now, but it will be a different Carmen for her, right? And you see that actually being discovered and being developed in the room, and so what you're going to see on stage is different than ones you've seen before.
It's always exciting to see a Figaro, or a Carmen, or a Gilda, or a Duke, or a Rigoletto revisiting a piece.
Absolutely.
Because everybody in the room is different from the last time they did it.
Absolutely.
You can have different tempos, a different production, different singers in those other roles, and it just brings a kind of excitement to the piece that is electric.
I think back to last season in our Turandot, and for those of you that had a chance to see that, it was Lise Lindstrom's, I have no idea how many performances.
200 or something like that.
But she did say for 5 years she did nothing but the role of Turandot. She went around the world singing, that's it. She sang no other roles. But she said the same thing. Each time you come into the room, there's different elements, and you're discovering new things every time. So that's what makes it exciting. So this Carmen will be different than the ones people experienced here. What was that, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Or the one that they had just seen last season, or perhaps earlier this season somewhere else. It'll be different. So it's definitely worth coming and seeing.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Thank you, David.
Great.